Look, it has begun. It has begun!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Flick in Reel, your friendly neighborhood fan cast. We are your host for movie news, reviews, and daily discourse. Let's skip the pleasantries here. It is here. Mortal Kombat is here. With all the blood, action, and flawless victories we were promised. It has been nearly 25 years since Scorpion, Sub-Zero, and Techno Syndrome graced the silver screen, and now after countless failed attempts to revitalize the franchise, a handful of delays, the latest adaptation has arrived. Can director Simon McQuoid and writer Greg Russo truly deliver a quality product and potentially bring an end to the video game movie curse? We are here to discuss just that. Who's we? Well, with me, I have my partner in crime, Scott Fox, who week by week does so much to keep this podcast machine well-oiled and operating. So let's bring him on.
Morning, everybody.
Doing, Scott?
Fantastic. Ready to talk some Mortal Kombat.
Awesome. Secondly, making his, I believe, third appearance on the Flick and Reel Fancast, he is the author of Anarchy, the head writer of the movie Trivia Schmodown, and lastly, he is the biggest advocate of bacon and graboids since probably Kevin Bacon himself. He is PJ Campbell.
What's up, guys? Good to be here. Happy Saturday. I'm excited to hang in with you guys. And that was the nicest introduction I've ever had.
Dude, you almost got me right here on when you had me on your show. So I had to try to keep par with it.
It's so good.
Now, I would be lucky to say that this duo completes my Kombat Kollective. However, how could I discuss Mortal Kombat without my mortal enemy? Every Hanzo Hasashi needs a Bihan. Every Sonya needs a Kano. My final competitor is my final guest, not to give it away, is a competitor in the Inner Geekdom division of the movie Trivia Schmodown, a representative of the Fan League 4, and an architect of my previous demise. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Amaru Moses.
Hey, look at that guy.
What's going on? Apparently, we're whores and not hosts, but it's okay.
Yes, yeah,
we are the horses today.
Movie whores all the time. I'm fine with that. I'm here. How y'all doing?
Doing fantastic. Nice to finally meet you guys. I've seen tons of your guys' videos, and I'm a fan of all the work you guys do.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Man. Yeah.
It is time to bring all the parties together. And with that, it has begun. And not really any warning here, guys. It's in the title of the video. We're talking spoilers. We're going right into it. Let me fix these banners here. I am so slow at all this banner crap. But here we go. That's right. You got
You're
Jackal
the
Cage.
oldest young person I know when it comes to technology. I just want you to know that.
You know, PJ, I'm going to give you the kindest fuck off. But Amaru, thank you so much for joining us. Really quickly, I think I want to start not with like a number per se, but just overall feelings. Because Amaru, I got no idea where you're at. Scott, I kind of know where you're at, and PJ, I think I know where you're at. And I think we have a really nice mix. So it'll be interesting to see where Amaru falls. So I'm going to say yours for last. I want to start with PJ.
Look, I went into this movie pretty much expecting we were going to get a movie that wasn't quite Mortal Kombat. Like, it was going to be an adaptation kind of doing its own thing. And it kind of delivered on everything I wanted. It was a little bit cheesy. It was gory. It was fun. Just exactly kind of what I was hoping for what would be like the pre-Mortal Kombat world. I've kind of hearkened it back to Mad Max. Like, if you go back and watch the original Mad Max, compare it to what the series became, it's a prologue. And this movie is a prologue film. For better or worse, it's a 2-hour prologue for the actual tournament. And for me, that was enough. Like, I got to hang out with some of the characters. I thought a lot of the fight sequences were really, really cool. Does it have issues? Yes, plenty of them. But it's a Mortal Kombat movie. I'm not looking for The Godfather. I wanted to just have 2 hours of watching people get bludgeoned to death, and I got it.
Scott?
I agree with a lot of what PJ said. There are a lot of issues with this movie, but it does also have a heavy dose of entertainment value. There's a lot of fun stuff in this movie. There's a lot of good sequences. There's some good humor. It's intermixed well. The character development, not exactly there. Yeah, it is. If you throw out the story and just understand that we're getting introduced to characters and we're going to see these characters fight each other. I will say,
always
though,
the best sign when you throw out the story.
I will say, though, the opening 5 to 10 minutes of Hisashi Hanzo, or I'm saying that wrong. I did
Hanzo
it backwards.
Hisashi, you were
Thank
close.
you. I said it backwards. His opening sequence was wonderfully done. It introduced the gore. Dude, when he takes the spike and ties it to the rope, and he starts mowing people down with that, it's so savage. It's so good. There's so much to love in that opening. I feel like that was the pinnacle of the movie. And when Raiden comes in, I know this is already spoilers, and scoops up the baby and takes off, like, I was pumped for the rest of the movie, and it kind of stepped down as it went along. But there's entertainment, and it was a Mortal Kombat movie.
And I'll add that, like, I think it's interesting that we can probably have so many things that we agree on, but it impacts us differently. So our overall feelings for, like, the end of the movie could vary vastly, because I agree with PJ. I agree with Scott. And yet this movie was so, and you could say my bar was too high, but I'm sorry. I'm going off storytelling that I've been given for me personally, like the last 10 years of the Mortal Kombat video games, where they really started leaning into the chapter by chapter storytelling. I got really invested. So maybe my bar was way too high for this movie, but I keep waiting for the video game curse to end and for us to get movies that are rivaling the MCU, or like the best of the comic book adaptations, because not every video game has a great story, but when they do, it's right there. It's practically written for you. Make your adaptation, make changes as need be, but there's something rich there. So I ended this movie being vastly disappointed. Saw it twice, more upset the second time, but everyone's going to feel a little differently about it. So, Amr, sorry to keep you silent for so long. Let's hear it. Let's hear the take.
This movie made me sad. It made me sad. About a month ago, I watched the 95 Mortal Kombat for the first time in about a decade. And as an adult, I understand how bad that movie is and how bad the choreography is. And how bad. And I still loved every second of it. Understanding, like, this is not a good movie, but it has a feeling, it has a story. The characters go well together, even if they're like not the greatest characters. They are characters and they are stories. And Scott said it best. Those first 7, 8, the first scene of Scorpion and Sub-Zero going at it is the best setup I have seen in a long time. And the fact that you can go from that setup and miss so horribly for the rest of the film. What makes me sad about this is that there are a lot of great things in this movie. Scorpion and Sub-Zero are great. That first 10 minutes is great. Kano is great. Everything else, we didn't get a story. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to say. I'm going to say it, and then I'm going to explain it to you again. We got a video game tutorial. That's what we got as a story. We got paper-thin, boring characters out of characters. I was expecting Cole to be paper-thin and boring-ish. Louis Tan did what he could do with that film. I was expecting that. I was not expecting Liu Kang, Kung Lao, and Raiden to be any random character you wanted. Just replace their name and replace another person, and it could have been. You wouldn't know. They were boring. They were dull. And I think all of that combined Like some things I would give a pass to. I was like PJ, I wasn't going into this looking for, I wasn't even going into this looking for a great video game movie. I was looking for, give me the formula from 95, but make it a little better. Give me gore, give me action to make it entertaining. And the fact that there was like really a lot of greatness in this movie, but everything was, there was no story to tell. This was I'm going to give it to you all on a silver platter and let you see that. And I was like, you could give me an explanation video for 30 minutes before going into the tournament, and it would have amounted to the same thing. The combination of all that made me so sad. I was just like, oh.
You could get an equal value out of just going and playing the video game.
Yes.
To seeing this movie, and actually probably get a little bit more depth of character.
I was about to disagree because you can get way more out of the game.
The video game's got much more depth, and there's a bigger catalog there too. And I'm with you. 95 Mortal Kombat is trash, but I love every second of it. It's so good.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that Goro is a complete animatronic robot blows my mind that they were able to do that. Goro was the peak of robotics for movie making. And after that, they started going CGI with everything. And you can tell he's a robot, but it's still amazing what they're able to pull off with him. And his fight with Johnny Cage is, you get the crotch punch. It's fantastic. There's so much good stuff. And Johnny Cage should have been more in this movie, and he's a leftover teaser at the very end. And then Liu Kang,
anybody? Whoops, wrong button. Wrong button.
Liu Kang was super hollow. Anybody could have done that. Anybody could have filled in that role as a mentor to try and help them figure out. Kung Lao, I actually liked a little bit better, and his finish move was pretty sick.
Yes,
but some of the finish moves
reaction in the theater when I actually went with a public group that everyone screamed. I could tell I had a lot of Kyles in my theater though, because every time it was like the smallest amount of gore, there's like, yeah. I was like, no, give me some.
Well, dude, we've also been stuck inside for a year. Let people have their.
Listen, I think that's a large part of why I liked Godzilla versus Kong as much as I did. Probably it was like the first 100%. Thing I saw in theaters, and I was like, yeah, all right. But
it's an action extravaganza, and that's what it's there for. And that's it.
What's interesting to me
when it comes to this property.
Well, like what's interesting to me is like I'm sure you guys remember a couple of years ago there was the Machinima mini series, 2 seasons that they did on YouTube for Mortal Kombat
Legacy.
And what was cool about that was it was like 10-minute intervals, which was essentially what we were talking about. The opening of this movie is the best thing in the movie. Like bar none, it is the best thing in the movie. And basically what Legacy was every character's opening 10 minutes in a Mortal Kombat movie if you did that. And I'm starting to wonder if it almost would have been better if the Legacy series had been like the jumping off point for doing these movies, because at least then we've spent time with the characters and you started to build up who they are and their relationships. Because the one thing that this movie lacks is character depth in almost any regard, which is frustrating considering these characters are rich and they are layered. They always have been, and you could do a lot with it. And I think that it's almost unfortunate that Legacy as a thing exists, because I can look at it and go, maybe we should have done that and then did the movie. Like spend time with those characters and then put them in a movie together.
Well, you'll hear me say this probably multiple times throughout this review. I said it before the movie was announced, especially after watching Legacy. Legacy was definitely it was a high budget for a YouTube series, for the Machinima series, so it was impressive in that way. But it was a Machinima fan series basically, with some good talent in it. But just that told me, I was like, Mortal Kombat would be better served with series storytelling, because when I'm playing the game, it's basically series storytelling. It's chapters. They have it broken up into chunks so that they can focus on certain characters, so that you can care about the events that happen. And so you have HBO Max behind this property, right? Which is one of the like highest tier budget-wise streaming services that are out there. So I think that would definitely be the way to go. Oh my gosh, we're almost 15 minutes into this. So any last thoughts before we like dive into the story?
I will say, I actually didn't mind Johnny Cage not being in it because, as you said, it's good serialized. I think that Mortal Kombat is it should be outside of. I actually really like Sonic. I thought Sonic was great, so I'm excited for that. Sonic. I feel like this is the franchise that if studios took it, I don't think it took it seriously. They look like they took it seriously. They started out thinking like it was going to be a serious thing. But if they took it seriously, like you mentioned, you like Godzilla versus Kong. I thought Godzilla versus Kong was perfect because we knew going in, this is not going to be a good movie. We want Godzilla and Kong to fight, and we want some type of story to get us in between. We got a story. Some of it was not great. Some of it was like, okay, I'm good until I get the next fight. I'm entertained. Mortal Kombat can be that, and it could be better. In the end, I got enough of I got enough greatness to be like, you know what? If they really if they actually put some story and character into the next film, they could make a very, very good movie because they have everything they need and they showed glimpses of greatness through this film. So I'm just hoping, and I'm going to be there next time it comes out.
I am 100% with Amaru in this because, again, I'm going to say I'm looking at Mad Max. Go back and watch that original Mad Max movie, and it is nothing like The Road Warrior. It is nothing like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's nothing like Fury Road. That movie is a prologue for a much better series, and I think that this movie kind of ended up being that for better or worse. I was very entertained, but for better or worse, it's a prologue for a better film.
The hard part is if you botch a prologue badly, you never get the rest of it. Right. And if this does poorly, and if you don't have a good cornerstone, you can't build anything else off of it. And in this movie certainly made me feel like, is it bad enough that HBO dumps the franchise?
I don't think so. Luckily, I've heard a lot of people who really enjoyed this film. And
it's polarizing. It's you love it or you hate it.
Yeah, but I think I've heard enough from general audiences, and I think this is because it's one of the first movies back. I have hope that enough people are going to love it or be like us and say we were disappointed, but we see it. Keep moving forward, please.
Well, and the good thing for this movie, to Scott's point, is they could, but this was only made for $50 million. In the grand scheme of things, it's a very cheap production of Hollywood filmmaking.
Which is why HBO Max could take it.
Made $9 million last night alone. That is enough on opening night in the middle of what's the end of this pandemic still for me to be like, you know what? There's hope for the franchise. If it makes even $20 to $30 million this opening weekend, it's easy. There's nothing coming out until May again, really. So it's got a nice long run to just make money for itself.
Technically, it's sitting about 20 plus, right? Because it made 11 internationally before coming over here. I think. I think it was 11 opening weekend. And then
you got to count streaming service too. How many people watched it last night at home? How much is that generating for HBO Max? Who knows if that's really driving new subscriptions? But if it makes it, everything boils down to dollars and cents. And if HBO comes out positive dollar wise, well, you get more. The question is, how much do they invest in the next ones? That's the hard part. Is generally the investment goes down a tiny bit. Unless it blows the doors off, then they throw a ton of money at it. And this, I don't think blows the doors off. I will say this, though. It's rewatchable. Mm-hmm. I'll give this another go. I'll watch it again. It's not so bad that I watched it one time and was like, that's it. Never going to see it again. I'll throw this back in. There's enough to it. And if anything, that first 8-minute opening, I'll watch on repeat. And
Brian, I just did 5 times before the movie came out.
And Brian just said that Molly tried to watch it last night on HBO Max and it was down because it was being watched by so many people. And I mean, remember, they even said Godzilla vs. Kong for Max was huge. And I'm sure that Mortal Kombat also is going to be, it's a very similar audience. You're pulling in a lot of people, but the video game audience is even bigger. And people were excited for this movie. That trailer was legitimately fantastic. My parents know jack shit about Mortal Kombat. And even they were like, we want to watch that movie. So for me, that's a good gauge.
And also, in addition, objectively, this is twice as good as both of the 90s films.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, the other thing is, The trailer for this was outstanding. The trailer was a full-on high production hype video that really got you pumped to see it.
They really put the movie in 2 minutes, though. Like
Oh,
they
they
showed you
took
like a
all
glimpse
the
of
best
every single
parts.
fight.
Squoze it down, big time.
And so like all the filler that we got was us just waiting for the trailer moments. I felt, we're waiting for the Liu Kang dragon. We're waiting for, we see Jax going in on Raiko, and we're like, oh, waiting for that. So it was waiting for the Sub-Zero Scorpion fight, which was in the very first trailer, and it's the end of the movie. So it felt like a lot of waiting for.
But that's every trailer, though. Unfortunately, like every trailer you watch is kind of that, right? You see stuff in a trailer, and you're like, I can't wait to see that in the movie. Like that's the point. It sells you on wanting to see that.
It's always a pleasant surprise when they like Marvel typically balances it out, where they give you some moments to look forward to, but sometimes some of the best stuff wasn't in the trailer. Not always, but sometimes. But it just didn't feel like there was a lot left. But anyways, we got a lot of people watching. I'm excited for it. Let's start talking about the movie. We talked about that first 10 minutes on the Hanzo Hasashi compound. This got me really excited because this was something that was explored in Legacy. There's an animated movie that just came out last year called Mortal Kombat Scorpion's Revenge. Again, it's this story. They did the story in Mortal Kombat 9, so I'm very familiar with this story. But the thing that all those other incarnations had in common was the Quan Chi tie-in to Scorpion's story. And if you are familiar with Scorpion, you know that it was never Bi-Han that killed his family. It was Quan Chi impersonating him, and that's how he became Scorpion. There's all that stuff. But I'm not going to turn this into a Splano vision for Mortal Kombat. I'm going to try not to. Anyways. But I thought that maybe they would leave that door open so that they could do that story. But they made it where Bi-Han was just dead set focused on ending the Hasashi bloodline. And I was like, I feel like you really cheapened it and kind of took the shortcut route to telling that story, which is, again, why I would want either another 30 minutes of film or a series. But let's get down to like the grit of it and like the actual fight choreography and stuff like that and the music. What is the PJ? I feel like you brought it up recently. What is the composer's name? I'm not overly familiar with him. I know he's doing it's like Ben.
It's Benjamin Wallfish, yeah.
Okay, so I was close. Okay. And he's doing Flash now. So Warner Brothers is clearly happy with him. I don't think
he did that. He did like Blade Runner 2049. He did Shazam. He did both the It films. Like he's a Warner Brothers dude. He's good. I like him a lot.
Yes, right here for anybody that is unfamiliar is Benjamin Wallfish. And I listened to the album all the way through like 10 times before I saw the movie. So I was very excited for it. I love the music, but it's not always well placed, but I kind of blame that more on like how they edited it in, but I think it's all very well composed. Along with like the Techno Syndrome redo. But
I like the nods to 95 to the 95 score. Yes. I could hear the little nods and I was like, there they go. Okay, that was good.
If I had $1 for every time somebody told me this,
so here's going into that. I don't know Mortal Kombat lore like that. Just basically what I've seen in the video games, what I know from 95, and like I could feel what you didn't like. And watching those 10 minutes, I was like, this is what I accept. If this movie is like this from here on out, this is the problems that I'm good with because one, Hiroyuki Sanada can do no wrong, ever.
Yeah.
Ever. And then Joe Taslim coming in as Bi-Han, I was like, let's see how he does. From jump, man was great. And I knew, I've never seen Scorpion's Revenge, but I've seen the trailers. And from the trailer and from the movie itself with the knife going through the screen, I was like, this is Scorpion's Revenge. I get to see what this is about. And that 10 minutes was what I wanted the entire movie to be. Where I was like, they mentioned the clans. I'm like, I have no idea what clans y'all are talking about. Are you going to explain it? Hopefully, if you don't, I don't care because everything else is entertaining. Other people, I'm like, when people who know the lore are going to talk about it and say, I didn't like that, I accept it. I understand it because you want more. And Matt said you have to kind of balance it. That was my acceptable amount of here's the problems, but it leaves doors open and it brings me in without over explaining.
Yeah, it's 100% the thing I think about with comic book adaptations, right? Like, so many comic book movies that we watch have to streamline the stories that we know and do them in different ways that are accessible, easier to get through. Like, look at the Winter Soldier storyline and things like that we've done. Like, that is a completely streamlined version of what you could have gotten from the Brubaker run. And that's okay, because as long as it stands alone and it works on its own, then that's really what matters. And like Jesse, you even said up top, you're like, you're a little compromised with this because you love the property. I know that. And that's not a bad thing. And it's hard sometimes when you love a property and you watch it and you want it to, you know what it can be, and it doesn't quite get there. John Carter is a perfect example for me of, like, they took a storyline and they truncated 3 of the books kind of together into one movie. And I actually thought it worked as a streamlined version of what a John Carter story could be on the big screen, while also being more accessible for people.
Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Those 2 movies are amazing, and the people who don't separate the books from the movies and the content completely are the ones who hate it.
Yep.
And I understand. I understand all those spectrums, and I see your point. I see PJ's point, and what I always want is just a middle ground of give me entertaining, let people who know the lore further explain what was missing, but don't leave out so much that I'm bored.
So, sorry, my son just screamed at me. I put a lot of this on the fans because expectations set you up for disappointment and for failure. And the fans, comic book fans, video game fans, are some of the hardest ones to please because they are the ones most invested in the Star Wars fans. They're the most invested in the lore, the books, everything that goes into it. And so when something comes up and it's different, it's because we walked into it expecting one thing and getting something else. Amaru nailed it with the Prisoner of Azkaban and Goblet of Fire. They're good movies, but when you put them against the book, they fall very short. And that happens a lot, but that's on us too. We have to walk into movies. I'm one of the biggest Tolkien fans you'll ever find, and I love everything he does. But I have to go into all of the Lord of the Rings movies and the Hobbit movies, putting a blinder on, saying the movies are just different than the books that I love, and it's okay because the movies are great. But people put things on a pedestal, and video game people do it the same. You got what, 10 video games, 11 video games of lore built in, and then you walk in, you're going, well, what's this? This isn't the people I know. Set it aside. Enjoy it for what it is. And you're right. Amaru nailed it. If the rest of the movie had matched up with the way the story was presented in the very opening, it would have been beautiful. But then we get people like Cabal, whose only backstory is, I wear this mask because Kano did something to me. By the way, I'm from Outer Realm. He's from Earth Realm, and somehow we battled before. There's some weirdness in the story and how those things overlap and intermix that cause you to go, okay, there's a lack of continuity here.
I want to spend some time talking about Sub-Zero and the presence that Joe Taslim brought. But before I do, I just want my one covering statement to try to justify my feelings is I 100% hear everybody, because I was ready for an adaptation. I was ready for changes. It's hard to always use Marvel as like the bar because they make adaptations and changes all the time. I mean, look at what they did with the Vision. But the thing is, like, do you add enough either background or storytelling reasons to make these changes work? And 95% of the time they do. And to me, this was more like it felt like drops. Like, instead of replacing something with a different form of storytelling, they just left things out. They talk later in the movie when they're like, okay, how did Hanzo become Scorpion? It's like he was searching for vengeance in the farthest reaches of hell. We call that the Nether Realm. And now he's back. I'm like, that's really lame. Do better than that, please. And that's how I felt throughout the movie, is I was just like, do better with these characters. I don't care if you change it or do something better, but do more. And that's it. Like, so I'll try to not bring that up.
Yeah.
No, dude, none of us are going to come after you for that. Again, like, I get it. We all have that thing. I think
don't
part
want
of
to be
it
the
is
squeaky wheel is what I'm saying.
I'm clearly a horror fan, and I just go into shit hoping that I'm going to enjoy it. Like, every Friday the 13th movie is, how many teenagers is Jason going to kill? Like, we know the lore and shit, but I'm not expecting anything. And I think that's kind of what my whole mindset for all things is, let's just go into it and see what happens.
Yeah, those first 10 minutes, I was like, I can feel stuff missing, and hopefully it's there in the future, in the next couple of hours. And then when you said they just explained it, I was also like, that's not enough, fam. That's not enough.
100%.
And
so
you don't have to. You absolutely don't have to follow the games. The point that I want to make is because, especially since 9, in which 9, 10, and 11, I think are just incredible storytelling, Mortal Kombat wise. It's the most inconsistent timeline and ever-changing timeline. So perfectly good with making changes. But I want depth. Even if it's different, I want depth.
I'll say this movie 100% felt like there was stuff that was cut around to like streamline a movie. And I think that this is a bigger problem that Warner Brothers is facing in general. This is a conversation about them because as a studio, I find them to be the most reactionary studio to how people respond to their filmmaking and the movies they put out. It was a conversation we actually had about Godzilla versus Kong. We know that there was like a 2.5-hour version of that movie, and you can feel it. You can feel stuff that was dropped storyline wise to just get to the next scene, because Warner Brothers wants people to just be in and out, because they saw how people reacted to King of the Monsters being 2:15 and they thought it was too long. So they were like, we'll speed up the process.
They take a lot of the wrong ideas from things that happen. They did it with BVS, and they're like, nobody liked this because it was dark. I'm like, but that's not our problem with it necessarily. And then they also cut half an hour out of the movie, which is again to our point, right? Or look at what happened. Like, they're notorious for cutting movies up to streamline them, to get more audiences in and try to make people happy. They always have to fix it after the fact. And that's like, it was half joking, half serious. I put a post on Twitter yesterday. I was like, release the combat cut, because I feel like there's 20 to 30 minutes missing from this movie.
But if it was 20 to 30 minutes of the same stuff they had after those 10, it wouldn't have made a difference.
It would have. I'm just being curious. You're right. I'm just curious. Like, more of was there more like introduction type stuff with certain characters? Would we had gotten a little more time with some of them? Because again, if you had that opening that was very Sub-Zero Scorpion-esque, that gave time with those characters, was there other things, maybe not on that caliber, but like, did we get more of like, how did Sonya end up with Kano? Like, where was that storyline in the movie? Like, I don't necessarily need it, but was that a thing that we saw that before it was cut?
They didn't reference it at all. It's just, hey, I've got this guy tied up in my basement.
Right. Exactly.
That's it. Nobody questions it. Nobody thinks anything weird about it. It's just, I got this criminal.
These are my problems.
Yeah. I'll say that is my biggest problem with it. And that's what annoyed me so much, because the skeleton of the story of what was told is actually really great. It's just how it was told. Kano's here, accept it. Sonya knows everything about Mortal Kombat there is to know, accept it. Here's Arcana, accept it. We're all gonna get it. Oprah's giving away Arcana. You get Arcana. You get Arcana.
Well, and Matt's right. Matt says they reference it because they do say that how it happened, but I again, like, I'm just curious more as a filmmaking sort of thing. Like, did we see it in any regard that was filmed, sort of thing?
You told me how it happened. You told me what you're gonna say. You then said it, and then you're gonna say it again. Why don't you show me instead, and then let me understand the things that you don't have to say? That's much better storytelling than explicitly putting it on a platter for me to read.
This movie, and again, I like the movie. It was just exposition.
God. We gotta pause so that we move through the story, because the last time we actually talked story points, we're talking about Joe Taslim and Sonata. Yeah. And I want to bring that back, because one of the best points about it is the presence that Joe Taslim brought. The second he comes on screen and he comes into where Hanzo's family is, he's a horror figure. He's straight out of a nightmare. Mm-hmm. Like, the face acting he does, the way he postures himself, the way he's like wiping the blood off on his tunic and stuff is so good. And I like the effect of when he starts cryomancing, and it's like drying his hands and cracking it, and you see the blood and stuff. And I was like, this is great. Even if they don't follow what I know the story to be, like, I'm visually loving this. I'm liking the music. The actress they chose is really great.
Yeah, when he was
emotional.
When he was doing that, when I was watching, I was like, is that hurting him? It looks like it's hurting him, and that's really cool that he's doing it. Yeah, that was the everything about those first 10 minutes. I love.
And then we get to, as we've talked about before, Hanzo just wiping out a whole bunch of the Lin Kuei members, which I could have taken a little bit of like, what's a Lin Kuei clan? What's a Shiai Ryu clan? Because if you're doing Scorpion Sub-Zero, it's huge, and it doesn't take much. It's like a scene. Or like even Raiden with some exposition being like, oh, they've been warring clans for like generations or something, but they didn't. So moving on, the fight between Hanzo and Bihan was real good. And
when he threw the spade or the spike, and I know there's another name for it. When he threw it into the tree and then yanks it back and it slices his face, and then that's a callback later in the movie when he throws it, but the second time Sub-Zero catches it. But their back and forth was dynamite. That the fight sequence, that was one of the, not just the best choreographed, but that was on par with a lot of other fight movies. That I'll take that any day of the week.
I love the dynamic
Sonata.
of it being,
No, go ahead. I was going to say, good job, Jesse. You and I, same way, like, well,
every time.
Like, we keep talking about Joe Talisman, but like also Hiroko Sanada in all of this is so awesome. I've been a fan of him for a long time. I'm a big fan of J-horror, and he was in the original Ringu. So I've been very familiar with him since like the early 2000s, and he was in Rush Hour 3. He's been in all sorts of things. Like if you go back, he's got a big filmography, and he's super talented. And I think that between the two of them, the thing that worked the best is, Scott just said it, the dynamic between them is so excellent, and it's because arguably they're the two best actors in the movie. Like these are two guys that have been around it for a long time who can be.
It's hard
badass.
to even say arguably, because like, yes,
They are.
absolutely.
Well, yeah, but like, they're just excellent actors that are also incredible at action, and they got to do both.
Right.
I'll talk about it a little bit more, but this was definitely, as Scott said, the best choreographed, the best fight scene. I have my own thoughts on the rest of the action, and I'll get to that later. But that then and there, that was amazing mix of acting and action. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Amaru nailed it also with when Bihan comes on, he's a horror figure. And every time you see him the remainder of the movie after that opening sequence, it's really intense. His presence in every scene that he's in makes you tense up as you're watching it. It was one of the things where when you saw him, you were like, oh crap, it's about to go down. And not even like in a, like this could be dangerous or what could be happening. It's like people are going to die. And when he shows up to track down Cole and he's dropping hail balls everywhere and throwing ice pellets at everything, he's just very intense. The rest of the movie, he sets a tone in every scene that he's in that lacks with anybody else. Nobody else carries the same tone or weight when he's in it as he does.
They straight up Jasoned him at one point, like when he goes to get Cole's family, which I thought was a nice touch when she walks into the room and she walks back out and he's at the door. Like it was such a great horror moment. And there was James Wan produced this, and there's little moments throughout where you can feel James Wan's touch, where it was like, hey, do this thing with this character, you might get a bigger reaction. And I think that was one of them.
A very random thing I latched onto from the beginning is when he was switching between Chinese and Japanese, and at parts he's like, I don't understand what you're saying, but I'm going to kill you anyway. Little touches like that was like, that is weird, and I've never seen it, but that was nice.
It was so cool.
Again, adding to, he's not just an intimidating assassin, he's an educated assassin. He's smart. His character easily, as far as the entire thing, is my favorite because of how scary he was, how smart he is, and there's nothing scarier in a movie than a smart villain. He was smarter and came across more powerful and more intimidating than Shang Tsung. Shang Tsung, other than sucking the soul out of a guy, did nothing for me.
Joe Taslim, the way he carried himself, especially upon my second rewatch, I really noticed it. Like it's just him approaching like Shang Tsung's throne. This like just like really evil swagger that he had. The way he walked up, I was like, this dude will mess you up any given day, and he doesn't really need a reason. And I like that about him. It's they went a little farther off the edge with the Bihan character. Originally, he is an assassin, but he's not like he's a bad guy, but doesn't mean he's a bad guy, you know. But yeah, I really like this scene. It was I like Raiden's entrance. He looked cool. I visually like the look of Raiden. Although I will say that sometimes it wasn't a problem, but with Raiden, for as much exposition as he had and as much as he had to explain things to people, I didn't always clearly understand what he was saying. Like there was a little, I mean, accents. You know, it's not a big deal, but it was hard, and I missed some things.
It also wasn't just the accents. I'll say this. I thought this movie had like very poor sound design kind of overall. There was times that dialogue was lost a lot, and it wasn't like me being in the theater that's not good at what it does.
Well, I saw it in Dolby and had the same issue.
Yeah, like the sound mixing in this was not the best. Like dialogue was lost in things where for whatever reason, like they'd let a character wander off screen and the character would say something and you'd hear it in like a back channel, but if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't notice they were even saying it. Like just weird sound mixing that should have been thought about a little bit more.
I also noticed some spotty ADR in certain scenes. I was like, that was weird. Surprised it got through editing. So I think from there is that when we get the black screen that explains it's like Earthrealm is in peril basically. And the most exposition we got to explain Mortal Kombat was a paragraph on a black screen, and I was like, wow, that's unfortunate. And they're like, Outworld has won 9 of the previous tournaments. If they win one more, then they get to invade Earthrealm. And I was like, I mean, that would have been cooler show than tell, but sure. And I think we get and it said the world will basically be saved by the continuation of the Hasashi bloodline, and then it goes to Cole Young. And I'm like, okay, so no aura of mystery there at all. Because they try to use it like it's a big reveal later in the movie, but obviously
that reveal is not handled the best either. But that's okay.
It was pretty obvious from the trailer, but again, that happens. So
they show him looking in the mirror, and it flashes to Hanzo, and they give him like the yellow gauntlets. I'm like, I get it. And then his daughter, who I think half of us thought was his little sister when it started, gets. Like,
I was confused as to the relationship there. It was not clearly lined out, and he's a young enough person. She was old enough that it made you question what's the layer here. And the review, there was nothing really shocked or jumped out. They were like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming." Darth Vader did not announce that he is Luke's father in this movie, and nobody everything was so forced or under-explained that you're just like, okay, whatever. We're just transitioning. And the transitions were weak. Even as you noted, the ticker where it read the 4 lines basically explaining the difference was like, and even that, it went really quick. I actually had to pause the movie. I was glad I watched it at home so I could catch up on what was that? Because it's super small print, and they did 4 lines on the screen at once, and it rolled by fast. It was just poorly transitioned with that.
And I'll bring it up later, but because they talk about Outworld in that those couple lines there, Outworld really feels like an afterthought when it is a primary piece of Mortal Kombat. No matter how you adapt it, if you have Outworld, that's what Mortal Kombat's about. It's Outworld versus Earthrealm. Like it's the other half, and it just kind of existed. But how do you guys feel about Cole Young? Because I'm going to take a deep breath. Reserve my feelings because there's a lot of hate fire here. I thought it was a bad idea from the get. We did find out it is a Warner Brothers mandate. Again, studio meddling before they even started writing the script. The writers said that this was a mandate that they were given to have this character.
Go ahead, Scott.
I hate Warner Brothers. Let me just say that. Warner Brothers has the longest and worst track record for getting in the way of a good studio production. The only thing worse would possibly be Fox with how they handled Fantastic Four in any version. But their studio meddling, their stuff is terrible. But Cole Young was kind of a crap character, in my opinion. I was not invested in him. They didn't develop his character very well. It was super predictable that he was going to have to protect his family in order to reveal his powers. As soon as you found out what the powers were about and that he had to either get angry or afraid in order to reveal them, you knew they were going to go after his family. And matter of fact, when Raiden sent him home, it was like, all right, like they're going to send somebody, they're going to be in danger of being killed, and he's going to have to reveal his power to save everybody. It wasn't even a deep plot line.
Yeah, I tell you the truth. It's very similar to the movie for me, where I was like, you know what, the character and the idea could be something that could be executed pretty well. It just wasn't executed. It was telegraphs. He was wooden. You don't care about him. I didn't mind the idea of bringing in a new a new character and tying him into the story somehow. And I like the
categories. We're film whores.
Yeah. And I was like, I'm actually okay with also him just having a connection to Scorpion and how they're going to bring that about. And again, how it came about later was like, there's so much a better way to do that. And then it was more the execution than the idea. The idea was like, idea can work. They executed it really bad.
I'm kind of with Amaru in this. Like, I don't really blame Louis Tan. Like, I think the idea of having a character as like a audience surrogate's not the worst idea, to be honest. Like, it's not a bad thing to create a character from the ground up if you really want to do it. Like, Mortal Kombat has a big enough world that I think you can fit new characters in, right? It's about how you do it. It's 100% about how you do it. And again, I think this is the shortcomings of we didn't get enough time with most of the characters. We didn't get enough backstory with enough of the characters. We didn't get to spend time and really get to know any of them. And Cole, being the lineage of Scorpion's not a bad idea. Like, there's nothing wrong with that inherently. It's about how you do it. And this really just falls on a studio that wanted it to be there and not also giving the character the time to develop.
100% agree. It's nothing wrong with Louis Tan or the character by itself. It's the use and the development was non-existent. I was not invested in him at all by the end of the movie. By the end of the movie, I wanted Hanzo back. Like, I wanted that to show back up. And when he comes, we needed a lot more of him worked throughout. If he had been showing up as kind of a mentor to guide Cole along somehow, and they had made a connection there, but instead it's like he somehow comes from hell in order to help him defeat Sub-Zero, and Sub-Zero had to be double teamed in order to be killed by a ghost and the super fighter. Like,
Scott's right. He straight up should have been the Obi-Wan Kenobi to Cole. Like, he should have popped up throughout the movie, training him in different capacities. Like, and if Cole didn't know at the time, you know what I'm saying? Like, even if Cole didn't know he was related, it could have been like this guiding force essentially. And then the reveal should have been not from Raiden, but from him, and to be like, you're my descendant, and this is me trying to help you, and like, we can protect Earthrealm together. Like, that would have worked better, I think, is storytelling wise.
I thought that the spirit of Hanzo was going to come into him and he was going to take on the role of Scorpion.
Yeah.
And so when his powers were revealed, I was like, again, Jesse, calm down for just a moment, because I know you know all the backstory.
No, I'm about to catch fire Scorpion style right now.
I was expecting the flames and other stuff to come over him. And so when his powers revealed the way that they were, I was like, this is not what I was expecting at all. And then I had the thought, well, how's Scorpion come back? And the way they brought him back was just, I returned from hell.
I was about to say the exact same thing. When I saw his hand go, I was like, okay, Hanzo's going to take over his body, and we're going to get Scorpion within Cole. And then he came and somewhere else. I was like, oh, he's just back. And we got to accept it. I would have accepted him taking over his body, because I could come in my mind. That's his descendant. That's the mark. That's some things I can accept.
It would have been like the spirit of his ancestors coming on him, which way more sense.
Before going back into like what Cole's doing and like moving forward, I do and I don't have a pushback for the idea of Cole Turner. I agree that with all the mythos and stuff, which is not explored, it would be great to have a surrogate character to tag along with, to discover things as they discover things. 95 did it better. I'm sorry. When you have Sonya, Liu Kang, and Johnny Cage, they're all going into this tournament like, I don't really know what's going on. You could have used any one of those. Even if you want to follow with Sonya's obsession with discovering more about this Mortal Kombat character, that could have been our starting point. We could be following Liu Kang, and he could be giving exposition to somebody, and that could be our starting point. He's an Earthrealm warrior too. All these all these Earthrealm characters could have been your surrogate person going in. Johnny Cage in the games has always been the best example. I don't know why we need, like, I'm cool with new characters. That's fine and good, but I don't know why we had to not have certain characters in order to have this character that was flat, wooden, and despite all the screen time he had, he still felt underdeveloped.
Like you said, I mean, it was a WB mandate type thing, but it's also kind of the thing that you see Disney do in a lot of their remakes. They create characters because they want to be able to hold on to characters for a longer period of time. If things become public domain later, like as weird as that sounds, it's a business thing more than anything. And I hate saying it that way, but it's just the truth, for better or worse.
Yeah.
So we get Cole doing some MMA fighting, and the first, but far from the last failure of the Cole Turner character. And I'm fine with struggles.
Cole Young.
For the record, he was announced as Cole Turner when they started talking about this movie, and then they changed it to Cole Young, so I'm still catching up on it. But yeah, he gets his ass readily handed to him over and over again until he gets his Black Panther Arcana suit. And I don't know why they gave him tonfas, but whatever. They were trying to be unique. And then he gets approached by Jax, who takes an interest in his birthmark. And then they go out for ice cream. Jax is watching him, reporting back to Sonya. And then we see visually probably maybe my favorite part of the movie, which is when Sub-Zero like comes through the smoke from Outworld. It starts snowing, and then he like takes all the snow, freezes it slow motion style, and just causes like a hailstorm. That was badass. I'm not gonna lie. I thought that was a great representation of the Sub-Zero abilities. And then Jax grabs Cole, his family, saves him. They take off, and they see Sub-Zero in an alleyway. He says, "Take the truck," and Jax goes in after Sub-Zero, which also again a cool effect of Sub-Zero going through the door and like all the mist following him. What did you guys think about the Jax and Bihan showdown?
I actually enjoyed this entire sequence. I thought this was a good, this is a good starting point to say characters know things, others don't. This is how we're going to start to introduce the story and introduce Mortal Kombat. At first, with Makad Brooks as Jax, his first couple of lines, I'm like, man, you're delivering this not great right now. Not at all. Those screams and those yells are really forced right now. And
or how about I did 6 tours, motherfucker?
Yeah. I see, like later on those one-liners, I was like, that was a good delivery. Right here, I was like, crap, come on. The action sequence though was amazing. I like that. I did think that action sequence was great. I loved it in the trailer. I loved it in the while I watched it. And at this point in the movie, I was like, I'm getting worried, but I'm grabbing on to good things. So let's keep it moving.
Right. So far, my only complaint this far in the movie is I was like, wow, Cole Young does not need to be here. I thought that when they announced it, I thought it in the trailer, and I thought it watching the movie. Even though I tried to keep my mind open, I wasn't digging it, especially since it was so telegraphed that he was obviously the descendant of Hisashi. But this action scene was really cool. Watching Jax getting his arms iced and blown off and then tossed aside. That was cool. And then Jax had told Cole beforehand, go find Sonya at such and such an address. So he links up with Sonya. We find out that Sonya is almost to a paranoid level, obsessed with the Mortal Kombat competition. She has like a there is no Pepe Sylvia like board behind her of all the different Mortal Kombat little news articles and pictures and things that she could find. And there were some cool Easter eggs in there for some of the fans. There was a picture of Kotal Khan, who is one of like the anti-heroes of the last 2 games. And I'm trying to think what else they had there, but
Nighthawk, whatever.
Yes.
Nighthawk.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So I was like, that's cool. Cool little Easter egg. But then moving on, they have a little discussion about what it is. And he's like, you have the wrong guy. They explain the marking a little bit more. And then we're introduced to, I don't want to say the heart of the movie, but probably the most consistently entertaining aspect of the movie. You guys want to talk about Kano for a second?
I mean, I thought Kano kind of stole the movie, to be honest with you. I thought he was the right amount of being real cocky and arrogant like he needed to be, like good comic relief. I now understand why Jacob hated the movie so much. Jacob London hated it because it made Australia look bad, because apparently Australians are assholes.
But I mean that's always been Kano. He's an asshole that happens to be Australian.
It's more just a joke at Jacob's behalf because he's my friend and I like making fun of him.
Before we get into Kano, this is the point of the movie where I was done. The wall and Sonya explaining everything. This is where I was like, so we're not going to naturally learn Mortal Kombat. We're going to have somebody explain every single aspect of everything. You basically taking your black screen and giving it to Sonya. And this is where, so we're not getting a story here. We're getting our tutorial. At that point, I was like, well, this is where I don't like this movie anymore, because it's not a movie. It's not a story. And you're making Sonya look bad. Yeah, you're making the audience look bad. Like we can't understand things as we naturally go forward. And then Kano arrives, and like I am simultaneously entertained and happy. And at the same time, I'm like, you were developing Kano and what he's like and who he is without handing it to us, and you couldn't do that with your main storyline. Like you literally have something here that shows how the rest of the movie can be corny, funny, bad but good. What everybody wanted in this character, in this very highly used character, but you can't do it for your plot. And that's probably why I got more disappointed from that point on.
I gotta let PJ bring some positivity into the house.
No, why? No. Like, look, it's not. Again, I'm not like this is the best movie. You're all wrong. Like, again, I said up top, it's got issues, and that there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, the thing is like, I guess just knowing that I guess my expectations were already low because video game movies are inherently not very good. Like, I think my favorite video game adaptation to this point is probably Detective Pikachu. Like, as weird as that sounds, like Detective Pikachu is actually a pretty good video game movie.
I think Sonic and Detective Pikachu are on like that bar of like, that was better than it should have been. And instead, we a lot of times get that wasn't half as good as it could have been. Whereas both of those were better than they deserve to be.
The other one I really liked was Warcraft. And this kind of actually reminded me a lot of Warcraft in a lot of ways, where it's a world that's like super lore heavy. And you're trying your best. And, again, it's exactly what we were talking about earlier, right? That was also a prologue for a bigger world and bigger story that unfortunately we never got. And I really like Duncan Jones, and I think Duncan Jones did a great job. Here, I think the big thing for me is like I actually liked enough of the world. I liked enough of the characters, even if I didn't get to spend more time with them. And I thought the action beats were great most of the time. I think there was definitely some first-time director vibes in some of the sequences on making sure the camera moved a little too much, or they edited around fight scenes a little too much, where you could have just let the camera linger. I thought the opening was the best use of that because those two guys are martial artists. Let them do their thing, and you let the camera capture it. Like, I think the worst thing to happen to Hollywood in a long time was Paul Greengrass in the Bourne movies in a way, because I can't stand that like weird shaky cam, edit everything super quickly to like hide what you're doing. Let the fight scenes speak for themselves, man. And I think Combat did a pretty good job of doing that for the most part.
That's where I had my issues with the outside of anything with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. While I was watching it, like coming into the movie trivia community, I have learned a lot more about movies because beforehand I never caught choreography or sound editing. And now I'm watching movies. I'm seeing what people are talking about. That camera was like on elbows and knees and faces, and I was like, I can't see the fight. I can see the gore that you should, and it made me like looking back at it. I'm like, was this movie gory? It was gory, but was it that gory? Because I'm like, where am I catching it? Because everything is so close, and I can't tell the fights, and then all of a sudden you get a great fatality, and I'm like, but what happened with the fight? I think I'm looking at it, and that really was like outside of the book-ended fights. I was like, man, this action would be great if I could see everything. But
it's one of those things. Yeah, and I get it 100%.
Sorry, are we talking about Reptile?
No, in general, we're just talking
in
fight
general.
sequences. Yeah,
Oh.
like I'm a big martial arts fan. I grew up watching a lot of the old school martial arts movies, Jackie Chan movies in particular, were some of my favorites. And like, if you go back and watch literally any of those, the camera is pulled out as far as possible, so you capture everything. Like even Brett Ratner, I hate to say it, but even Brett Ratner got it with Rush Hour. You know what I'm saying? He let the camera linger on those fights when you want to see Jackie do that thing. And so I think that, again, that we need a movie like this to sit on the fights. Let the camera sit. You don't need to be clever with what you're doing. Let the choreography speak for itself. That's
Especially
big deal.
When you have actors from the Raid. Like, you don't need to have all these jump cuts. Sit, follow them if you need to, but like I think there's a lot of things that you could do.
Well, I would say at least
we'll talk about this.
Yeah. What I at least will say was Kano was so great that any fight scene and any scene he was in, it was elevated. Like the reptile scene, I enjoyed a lot, mainly because of the combination of Josh Howley or Josh, I keep forgetting his last name, but whoever played Kano, Josh Lawson. Yeah. His commentary throughout made everything else like I am loving all of this. So I like the reptile scene a lot. Basically anything Kano is in is like, this is the movie I want. There's flaws, but I'm entertained as hell.
He was he should have been the surrogate character, honestly, because he was the right amount of being self-aware within the film. And I think that the film needed a little more of that at times, while still also being entertaining. Like, I know some people find the character grating, but like, he's Kano, and it worked. And
Kano's a grating character.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like,
I don't know.
What Kano had that Cole didn't is like, you were allured to Kano. You listened to Kano. We enjoyed following him. Cole was just the reaction guy. They're like, react to this line, and it didn't work. And then Kano naturally reacted to all that stuff and had commentary to say about everything, and it worked. So it was almost like you had two characters designed to do the same thing, but only one of them worked and the other one just stole screen time. This might surprise you guys. Reptile, although vastly different from most of the incarnations of the games because they went full reptilian lizard with him, was a change that I accepted, because he's not like, you can find a story on Reptile. Like, you can go digging and there is background lore on Reptile, but story-wise, he's never been important. He's always been a lackey. You've never needed to do anything with him. They had him in the 95 movie, and he was
I accepted him as a reptile in 95. And then they gave me the ninja, and I was like, if they don't give me the ninja, I'm ready for that, because they did it in 95. So that's fine with me.
Yeah, I was cool with it, and it was a fun action scene. And yeah, that's a character that I don't mind that treatment to. And I'll skip ahead a little bit. Cabal is one of my favorite characters in Mortal Kombat, but it's kind of because I have a bias playing as him, and design-wise, I think he's super cool. He kind of got a little dicked in this movie. But again, I was like, I know that he's not that important of a character. I'm okay. So there were several times in the movie where I kept going, I'm okay. And then there were certain things I was just like, too far.
I thought Kano was the perfect balance. I thought Cabal was too far. He wasn't funny. He wasn't funny. He wasn't funny at all. And he was one of those, let me just drop you in here and you accept everything he says, like Scott said earlier. So
I couldn't figure out his accent until the second time I watched it. He sounds like Jon Favreau's Rio from Solo. And it's real weird.
Yeah.
It's real weird. So yeah, we get the reptile fight. We get another fatality that is, again, harkening back to the game. The heart rip, that's very Kano. So that was cool, and we got to see him playing with knives, and we get to see the black dragon on his knife, which is hinting at some conversations that come further. And bada bing, bada boom. Sonya says that, well, we'll give you $2 million or $3 million to find out where Raiden's temple is, which for some reason Kano knows. Well, I guess he says he used to run guns through by Raiden's temple.
Another thing I accepted based off of how his character worked. I was like, okay, cool, that's good with me.
Yeah, it wasn't great, but I definitely shirred my way through that. I said, okay, fine, let's go. This was the first time I saw like a weird ADR. It's like when Cole's like, oh, you're going to give him $3 million. And she says, fuck no. Her mouth didn't move when she said fuck. And I was like, weird. Okay, anyways, moving forward.
I also think that, again, this is one of those things we've been talking about with the edit being under 2 hours. I think that there's some of that dialogue and stuff that was ADR was them changing storyline stuff, which is a thing. Again, that's one of those you jump around and stuff, and that's kind of frustrating.
It is, and I felt like it definitely felt like there was some chopping with the editing, with the dialogue, with and I think PJ, I texted you this, that I felt the movie fell on the wrong side of fan service, because like even on the line where we went to Outworld for a second when Shang Tsung initially sends Reptile, he goes, "Melina, let's finish this," and I was like, all right, buddy, that didn't work at all. Please don't do that again.
There was a couple of times, like the flawless victory one was okay, but again, it was just kind of. And the weird thing, again, that was another one of those where, for whatever reason, the audio mixing was weird in it, so it didn't sound right. Like it was low, and if you weren't paying attention, maybe you wouldn't have caught it. And it almost didn't even sound like he was saying it. Like it almost sounded like it was supposed to be a voiceover thing, which was very odd.
And there was, speaking of voiceovers, there's an off-screen again that you can barely hear. When Liu Kang takes out Cabal, you just hear "fatality for Kung Lao." I'm like, what?
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, it was so quiet and awkward too, and I was like, why did you put that in there? It was like this added afterthought because we don't see anybody say it. It's just like, boop, put in there. So PJ, how I know we're losing you soon. How long do we have you?
Probably 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. Okay, we'll try to do a little bit fast forward and get you through this as much as possible.
No,
again, guys.
The good thing is there's not a lot of story to cover in this, at least.
Yeah, just a lot of me bitching. All right, so we get to the desert after they parachute in, and then because reasons, they find Liu Kang in the desert, and he takes him to Raiden's temple.
That shot of Liu Kang is so excellent. Yeah. And it was the trailer shot. It was like very reminiscent of Kung Fu and like some of the older martial arts films. And this movie is full of stuff like that. There are so many great one-shot sequences. Like they look beautiful, but it doesn't add up. And it's so funny because Kong Skull Island is
the trailer.
Well, remember we talked about this recently with Kong Skull Island. Kong Skull Island is full of that too. But in that, it works. Like all the visuals kind of come together in a way that it makes sense and it works. So that movie has tons of great shots and also works as a movie. This one, less so.
I really like Ludi Lin as Liu Kang. And I think that they could give him more to do. I think he's well cast. He's
I do too.
Physically phenomenal. That dude had muscles on muscles on muscles. There wasn't an ounce of body fat on him. And
former Schmodown competitor, Ludi Lin, by the way. Don't forget.
Oh, that's
very
right.
true.
That's right.
Very true.
I loved that he was kind of he was the quiet monk. It was the real like Liu Kang, where like Robin Shao got to be a little more brash, which was a lot of fun. But I thought this was an accurate but hollow portrayal of the character. It was a little bit of both.
I disagree. And this is me, the introductions and not the introductions, because the introductions was great, but getting to know for as little time as we did and getting to know Liu Kang, Kung Lao, and Raiden, I was like, okay, somebody told me Kung Lao's an asshole, but when are Raiden and Liu Kang assholes? And why are they only assholes? Why are they the one-dimensionalist of one-dimension characters? We get Christopher Lambert as he's not supposed to be Raiden, but he killed that shit. Whether you call him Lambert or Lambert.
Sorry.
And I'm just like, okay, Tadanobu is a better actor than this, and you're giving him really bad one-liners. And I'm like, Liu Kang just seems, they all felt wooden and boring and hollow. Kung Lao was at the top of them all because he was a little bit more arrogant than everybody, so he had a little bit more depth to him. But all of them were like, okay, well, they don't believe in you, and they're going to tell you that, and now it was just all really, really one dimensional with me. So
Raiden was my least favorite of all of them.
Yeah,
and that my biggest thing with Raiden is that he was a character that we needed to spend more time with. To understand where he's coming from and the stuff he feels, because to be honest, the first time we really spend time with him, he's such a dick to all of them for no reason. And it's like he just feels weirdly arrogant. Like you were talking about that Kung Lao being arrogant, but like Raiden was doing the same shit, but like he wasn't likable. And so everything he did just made me be like, you're kind of an asshole, and like not in a fun way. Like I kind of wish
like Kano was an asshole.
Weirdly missed.
Yeah.
Like I kind of miss Christopher Lambert. And that's a weird thing to say. I should never miss Christopher Lambert from anything.
He's my Raiden. I'm sorry. He's a brilliant Raiden. I loved him.
I like him too. But you know what I mean? Like
they were.
Like, I should Lambert. Yeah, like I should want him back.
I thought Tadanobu got cast, and I was like, yes, this is great.
Same thing. Yeah,
he's
ethnically accurate Raiden,
and he's
a great actor. Like he's a great actor.
Yeah,
I just there was the work that the stuff he was given did not match him, and that is so weird for me. And now I'm like,
they gave his lines on like a teleprompter because he would say things, and I'm like, I feel like you're dropping off on like one of those words, or like you are reading it, you're not familiar with. Like it felt like they didn't familiarize him with any of the stories or words and stuff because. He said Shang Tsung differently than everybody. Like it wasn't even recognizable. There were several things that I didn't know what he said till the second time I watched it.
Remember when he was in the Thor movies? Good times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good times.
Yeah. And when they gave him like an actual like great death instead of being stabbed very quickly coming in, like they made him the Warrior 3 that stood a chance. So
yeah. Good actor, man.
Good. So yeah, we get introduced to that. We get told about Arcana.
You get Arcana. You get Arcana. You get Arcana. You get Arcana. You get Arcana.
I think it was the spin from the Real review. I popped on there and I was just like, dude, like if I could summarize my big issues, it's Arcana and birthmarks. Because they over-explain some things and under-explain some things, and the choices that they made for which one to do when was real bizarre. Like, I mean, magic can exist. This whole Arcana thing and trying to give it's like, get angry and develop your powers. I'm like, it's unnecessary.
It was the problem that Thor had early on in the first Thor when they didn't want to be like magic is a thing. So they were like, well, magic is just science. Like we just know it is, like what you call magic is our science. And now we've finally gone the other direction where they're like, actually, magic and shit actually exists in the MCU. But like early on, it was the same thing, trying to over-explain magic when magic just is, and that's okay.
Well, yeah, they never felt the need to explain cryomancy, for Sub-Zero.
Yeah.
It just happened. Or Cabal's super speed. It just happened. And Cabal wasn't a champion. It didn't seem to be. And Cabal's actually from Earthrealm, but that was not clear. They talk about Black Dragon stuff, but now he's just with Outworld, and it's just really hollow again. But we do get some great homages with the training between like Kano, Liu Kang, and Kung Lao. The leg sweep thing had me in stitches.
That was funny.
That was so funny as hell because
anything Kano's in. Don't give me that. I said anything Kano's in. Don't come at me with that Harry Potter shit.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, every one of his lines of dialogue was when he called one of the characters Magic Mike, I was like, I'm dead. I'm done. Deceased. Pop culture references can sink a movie really quickly if you don't do it correctly, like as a joke. All of them in this were done the right way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, even though it also wasn't like the greatest, again, the reveal of Kano's Arcana was what I was expecting. This isn't great, but it's enough. It's enough, and it's natural to Kano. Yeah, and the rest of them were not.
I definitely laughed at he's like, I knew I'd get my powers before you, and I was like, well, I kind of miss him having like a cybernetic eye, but I guess it was one of those things that I didn't love, but it wasn't going to sink the movie for me, especially with his like performance. But as it went on, the usage of the Arcana just got sloppier and sloppier, especially with Sonya. My gosh.
Yeah, that just came. And I also didn't like Jax's either.
What? How does that work?
They tried to make it that he earned it trying to save Sonya, but I'm like, but this is in the middle of everybody getting theirs, and you're doing it for like 2 seconds ago. You got explained to you, and now you're getting it. And I'm like, you should have just got the cybernetic arms from the government.
Yeah, that was an example of over-explaining. Like, well, he had T-Rex arms, now he has Jack's arms. I'm like, just give him the Jack's arms. Like, just it doesn't. We don't need that. That's wasted time. You could have had Jack's kicking ass 30 minutes ago.
I thought when Raiden's people were rebuilding his arms, I thought they were going to give it to him, and I was like, I'll take that.
Instead, you got these little things.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. I won't talk a lot about Melina, other than it's really hard to do Melina without Katana and Baraka, which are the two people she has DNA from that make her who she is. Katana was important in the original 2 movies for a reason. It was a weird choice to have Melina in there and then kill her off with a one-shot. Here we go. We got somebody on PJ's camp.
Yep.
I know Maddie. Hi, Maddie.
Yeah, what's up,
we went
Maddie?
over that. There was a lot of blood and gore, but I couldn't see a lot of it. So the fights I couldn't see. So it was a little less to me. But I understand. Very quickly, can somebody explain to me how Cole is an ancestor of Hanzo when Hanzo's daughter is being kept away in a temple? How does that physically work out? If she's in the temple the whole time, what goes for? She doesn't leave.
Well, we don't know that she doesn't leave. It was 400 years ago.
Yeah, but the explanation, like when that happened, I was like, so did she leave? Did she stay? Did she find somebody?
You know what that was?
I want to know.
That was the equivalent of the Palpatine explanation in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, like where did the timeline come from? That was my who did she get it on with? That's what I want to know.
Sir, those were monks, sir. Respect the honor.
Exactly. Like how does that happen when the one descendant is anyway. Another thing.
We're gonna speed through. So Cole, again, in the training, got his ass kicked, got sent home, dishonorable discharge, basically. So go hang out with your family, you useless you. And I'm like, why am I supposed to feel for this character? We're halfway through this movie now, and he's just getting his ass kicked and asking dumb questions. Raiden, Shang Tsung tries to show up and just wreck shop, and Raiden says, nope, force field, because we're not going to do that. Then they send Cabal. Cabal knows Kano. Kano says, hey, betray these guys, destroy Raiden's staff, destroy the shield. And then we get some fighting, which is fine. I think the highlight everyone agrees is Kung Lao taking out Natara, who there's 2 characters without speaking lines in this that were supposed to be villains. Natara, not a word. Raiko grunts and makes sounds. Is that Nathan Jones, I believe, from Mad Max? Is that his name?
Nathan Jones.
It is.
Yeah.
It is Nathan Jones.
As hammy as parts of this movie were, his performance was like a different movie. He was somewhere else.
He was back in 95 Mortal Kombat.
Exactly. I was like, you would have fit back there. And with his sheer size, I thought he was, when they announced him, I thought he was going to be like Shao Kahn or something, because he's huge. I was like, Raiko's not that big of a whatever.
Somehow Cole gets beat up by everybody, and Goro can't rip him in half in 2 seconds.
Yeah. They killed Goro with a job. So let's fast forward to everybody being sent to individually take out the Earthrealm champions. So Goro gets sent to Cole. Cole discovers his Arcana, which is a kinetic energy, absorbing suit, very Black Panther-esque. And then he gets Tonfa blades. And I was like, sure, do that. And then he cuts off, I think it's one of Goro's hands, cuts him up the middle, and stabs him in the head. And I was like, okay, so are we going to establish the fact that Prince Goro of the Shokan, is the Mortal Kombat champion for 9 tournaments? He is the reason that they only have to win one more time. And then they're just like, oh, Goro, it's good to have you on our side. We're going to send you down here, and you get murked by an MMA fighter. That's the stuff I'm talking about. You can make changes, but make it worth it.
this is basically this whole thing of separating everybody is the up until Scorpion and Sub-Zero fight is where it's like y'all really were just rushing through this. You wanted action and you wanted no explanations, and it's just like take this, accept it. Let's move on to what we should have been focusing on a little bit more with Scorpion and Sub-Zero. So.
All right.
Bring up PJ's problem with Raiden. Everything with Raiden was a plot hole because we find out that he can lightning people wherever he wants. And Liu Kang is like, oh, I've been traveling the world gathering champions, but by the time I got to Jax, he was already, it was too late. I'm like, couldn't Raiden have just zapped you there?
Yeah. So
and then they go to the void, and it's like, oh, we're safe from Shang Tsung here. I'm like, you could have done that whenever. So,
all right. With that, I need to bounce out because I got to go get ready
PJ,
for other stuff.
Yes,
I appreciate you being on here so much. We'll probably wrap this up
man.
here pretty quick, but it was great talking Mortal Kombat with you. Thanks for bringing a positive spin.
It's always fun, and Amaru, I'm glad I actually got to hang out with you a little bit outside of just like taping stuff. So it's kind of nice.
First time I get to talk to you without being upset about your Harry Potter questions.
Hey, well, hey man, I appreciate it.
Yes.
Love both of you.
By the way, it was Egypt. All right, bye guys.
Yeah, I will never forget that. Peace be Jeff.
All right, so now we get to go in here, and you still got a couple minutes to wrap this up?
Yeah. So for me, when we got back to the end and we got to the Scorpion Sub-Zero fight, we already talked about it, outside of how Scorpion came back, because I really thought when his arm was on fire, I was like, okay, he's gonna take over his body.
Yeah, because he grabbed the Hanzo's like spear, and then they started catching fire.
Oh, he didn't take over his body; he just appeared. I already don't like this movie that much, whatever. But it was back to the strength of the film, which is Hanzo and Bihan, and that fight was still great, even though a lot of it we had already seen. I thought that fight was great going through it. I enjoyed that part of it again. Even with Cole trying to like break his family out of the ice, I was like, again, this is the part where you give me a lot of great stuff and some like okay stuff. That was the two bookends of everything else in the middle not being that great.
Speaking of Cole, we forgot to mention that again. He got his ass kicked by Melina. Melina was going to take him out, and Sonya showed up out of nowhere and was like, "I have pink blast now." Bam.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, okay, in the original arcade game, she could shoot pink laser beams, but Mortal Kombat since has dropped that because they're like, this doesn't make sense. It's dumb. Instead, she has like gauntlets now. Like she has like machine gun gauntlets that she uses. I was like, that's cool. She's a military person. Like she can have guns on her arms. It's not that weird.
And I was sad. I feel like it was going to happen, but I was sad that they killed off Kano. I was like, one of the best parts of your movies, nice nod to kill him with the gnome. That was a nice callback.
And what's funny is they stabbed his eye. So like it seems like Shang Tsung's bringing all these dead champions back to life.
So he can come back.
If he comes back, he's gonna have a fucked up eye. Which
there you go. And Joe Taslim apparently signed on for like 4 sequels. If it's good. So we know Bihan's coming back too, or some version of Sub-Zero is coming back.
If we are familiar with the Mortal Kombat lore, Bihan does come back as Noob Saibot, which is like the shadowy.
Who I thought was every shadowy little thing that came out. I was like, that's Noob. That's Noob. That's not Noob. That's just other.
What I loved is in that Scorpion Sub-Zero fight when he takes off all his shoulder pads and stuff, his outfit's basically black, like it's real dark, and I was like, oh, he looks like Noob already. So that's cool. And then we see him get burnt to a crisp, which is again a nod to Scorpion Fatality, classic Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, I was low key hoping he would rip and the whole thing came off, but then
and I love that it started turning into a skull. I wish it would have stayed. Let him be gnarly looking.
But I was like, oh, he's not gonna take it off. There's the fire. And then when I saw the skull, I was like, that's a good way to do it. That's a good way to do it. Matt said it.
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope Kano comes back anyway. I can understand why people say this movie is fun because there's a lot of fun to have in this movie. For me, there was way too many important things that were gone. You can have a bad story if you have good characters. You can have bad characters, like in 95, if you have a cohesive, passable story. You can't be missing both.
Not to plug the Quirky Mercs and my crew, but I have to because William Bibiani, I thought, put it really well. he said that I'm trying to remember the exact words, but he said 95 was like kind of like cheesy fun, and he's like, this movie to me just felt cheesy without the fun part. And they said Annihilation is a film.
Exactly. Yeah. So I knew Annihilation was bad back then, and then I looked back at the honest trailer. I was like, wow, that is trash.
I just rewatched it a week ago because my fiance she'd never seen anything Mortal Kombat, so I've been learning her up real good, and we decided to watch Annihilation, and she was laughing maniacally through the movie. So I mean, it's a good experience.
That's a good thing. I also I know we did said it before. Some people didn't like that Johnny Cage was the teaser. And I was like, no, that's good. And yes, I a bunch of different Sub-Zeros and
Sub-Zero's brother is Kuai Liang, and Kuai Liang is younger than Bi-Han. And I would like to see a different actor play Kuai Liang. He's actually, I have my top 3 characters in Mortal Kombat. My favorites are Kuai Liang, the second Sub-Zero, Johnny Cage, and Cabal. Cabal, I understand I don't have great reasoning for, but Kuai Liang has really great storytelling.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't he the? Well, actually, maybe I'm just thinking about Annihilation. Isn't he a good Sub-Zero?
Yeah, no, he is. That's why he's one of my favorite characters. Is he comes into the tournament and actually works with Earthrealm, and he realizes that his brother was an asshole, which is true. Yeah. So I like that character a lot. And then Kuai Liang and Hanzo, after Hanzo gets resurrected, end up becoming friends. And they like kind of reunite the Lin Kuei and the Shiai Ryu, and I think that's a really cool storyline. But we'll see. I think somewhere Chris Anthony Lopez is a big fan of that casting, but he's probably not watching at the moment.
Yeah. For me, in the end, after watching this, I was a lot more upset leaving than I was waking up this morning because I saw it last night. Because I am, again, grabbing on to all the greatness. Like, there's legit greatness in this film. The first 10 minutes, the last Sub-Zero and Scorpion, Sub-Zero throughout, Hanzo throughout, Kano throughout, and the skeletons of a story that should have been executed better. And the tease for Johnny Cage is like, PJ said it. I watched Mad Max and I was like, Mad Max is not good. And then I saw Road Warrior and I was like, oh, I get it now. Because I also hated Fury Road when I first saw it. I hated it for the longest time. And then watching Road Warrior and watching Beyond Thunderdome, I watched Fury Road again. And I was like, this movie, I get this.
That almost sounds like you're studying for Inner Geekdom.
I mean, if you follow me on certain things, if you watch Classic on Full Metal, you kind of have an idea of what I'm watching. But yeah, like I watched Fury Road and I was like, oh, I understand this now and I get it. So I'm hoping for the same thing. I'm hoping that this was like the foundations of what was good and what people take as fun. They make an actual serious movie. Like when I say serious, I don't mean good. I mean what we're expecting. And you can actually make an amazing Mortal Kombat film. I'm just expecting an actual story, some actual characters to mirror the Kano and the Sub-Zero and the Scorpion we got.
I have to comment on this really quick. Mortal Kombat 9, 10, and 11 is, if you're kind of new to some of the story and stuff, that's where you want to take off from, because they basically take the story up to a certain point in 9 and they reboot it. Raiden sends the message back in time and they kind of like restart the whole timeline. It's a great place to start. Storytelling's great. 9's hard to get a hold of unless you have an older console. So you can look up the cutscenes for all 3 of those games and there you go. But I wanted more. I believe in the potential for it to be better. I don't want it to be another 24 years until we see Mortal Kombat again. So if that means that I have to live with this continuity so that we can get a sequel and maybe that'll be better, I'm willing to do that. I think that you can keep the cast, even though I don't really like Cole, maybe reduce Cole's role. I know it wouldn't really make sense to like take him out entirely because you spent time on him, but he doesn't need to be the main character moving forward. So put him in a supporting role or something. Keep the cast. I think the main thing you need to do is twofold. 1, Warner Brothers, get your hands out of it. 2, no. I appreciate there's an ambition here. There is ambition in the movie. It's a first-time director for a feature-length film and a first-time writer for a feature-length film, which is usually this could have been a lot worse. You know, you could have had The Room with fireballs. So I just think they need more support. This property deserves more support, and I understand that there's not a lot of well-known people that would have taken this on. James Wan has his name attached to this. So I think get some other people that have worked with James Wan to continue this forward. Yes. What, Matt? What they said.
Yeah.
But anyways, I mean, that pretty much summarizes how I feel about it. I'm feeling accepting. I felt more than ever that I just want to go back and watch the cutscenes for the games because it makes me feel better about the mythos and stuff. There's a lot of lore there. And I remember telling my fiance very early on in our dating, which is a weird place to start, but I was like, hey, Mortal Kombat has a lot of mythologies. It's really, really cool. And she's like, isn't that just like a fighting game with like the blood and gore and stuff? I was like, check this out. And we watched the cutscenes, and now she's attached. When she saw the first trailer, she looked at me and she's like, where the hell's Johnny? And so I just love that we're at that point now. But anyways, Amaru, any last thoughts?
I'm gonna be there opening weekend for the sequel. Absolutely. Just because I'm hoping for better, and there was enough there that I think they can do better, and I hope they do better. But I was definitely very excited for this film and was disappointed. Hey, he's back.
Just in time to say goodbye. So Scott, well, we'll all say goodbye here because it is the time. Where can everyone find you, Amaru?
You can find me at my name, Amaru Moses, mostly everywhere. I am also have my own YouTube channel, Yuri Reviews, URIRUVIEWS, and Bite Size Breakdown on IG. I write with a crew of writers. We do movie reviews. My Mortal Kombat Bite Size Breakdown will be coming out fairly soon. 100 words or less. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Amaru Moses, Facebook, Twitter, and Reviews, RUVIEWS, Facebook and Twitter.
All right. Scott, I know for the most part you find both of us on Flick and Reel, but is there anything else you want to add? You are muted.
Sorry, I was going to say, I noticed there's a couple comments that said the movie will get better upon multiple viewings, and I would say I have to agree with that as kind of a closing. You can find me on Twitter at Pastor Dad Fox, and on Flick and Reel Fancast with Jesse, reviewing everything. And I do think this movie is definitely worth another view. But man, after the first 10, it just slowly declined.
Yes.
But still not the worst thing I've ever seen.
No.
not even close.
And what I think is laughable is going into it and after watching the trailer stuff, I was like, all it's got to be is better than Annihilation. And that's all it was. Better than Annihilation.
Better than Annihilation, for sure.
And it's hard to say it was better than 95 because I think I have more enjoyment factor with 95. But I mean, maybe as a quality movie, I guess. But
when there's a movie from your childhood that you love, it doesn't matter. It's hard to overcome that because it's got a sweet spot. And we can all agree that the 95 Mortal Kombat is not the greatest movie, but we all love it because it's just what it is. Yes. And this one, maybe there's going to be some people out there who think this movie sucks, but they just love it. And that's on them. That's if you had that kind of emotional response to it, claim it, own it. That's fine.
Absolutely. Amaru, I just want to say that you are welcome onto the channel at any time. It was fun having you on here. Thank you for a lengthy review. I was real sure we weren't going to keep it under an hour and a half. Maybe if PJ stayed on, it would stuck to an hour, 45 minutes. I don't know. Because you guys always have such great things to say. We almost pushed it to the length of the actual movie.
Jesse, whenever you are on One Gotta Stay, I cannot wait. So
ooh, yeah, give me the right format of something that I have opinion, because when it comes to music, I'm just trash opinions across the board. So
it's not always music. It's a lot of movies. It's a lot of everything.
No, I know. So if we get a movie in there, one that I have a vested thing into, then that'll be good times. Anyways, guys, thank you so much. Thank you for being in the comments. Thank you for joining us. Been a long time coming, and we will see you next Saturday for my birthday / 100 subscribers / engagement stream. It's going to be all kinds of celebrations. Scott's going to be on there. Amaru, I believe you are on the list as well.
Very possibly, yes.
Very possibly, yes. Okay. So until next time, guys, keep it real. We'll see you next week.